Ah. Hi folks, welcome to Kendo RANT. I know it's been a while since the last rant. The last one I did was over in Japan, actually. I hope you've seen it. Hope you enjoyed it. I've got a few more questions. I haven't got all of the questions that you guys have thrown at me this week, which is great. There's loads of them. I'll try and answer them sort of more frequently in more videos. I know I say that a lot recently. Things are nuts right now, okay? But I will try and catch up, okay? I will try and bring you some more of these videos because I do know how much you love to watch them. Okay, so first question. I'm not sure if this is worthy of a Kendo rant. Well, it certainly is. I wonder why in promotion exams, men and women are mixed together. As a male, I don't have a problem, but it seems unfair to women. In Shiai, men and women are typically grouped separately. Is there a deep-rooted philosophy that is driving this? Okay, so it depends really on the area and obviously the amount of people there are. In lots of gradings in Japan, actually, they do separate men and women. Not always though, but sometimes they do. It depends if they've got enough people going for a particular grade to do that. But at the same time, grading is very different to Shiai, isn't it? Because it's not about whether you win or lose, and it's about your actual, not just your physical proficiency at Kendo, but your obvious sort of display of your understanding of Kendo so far. And I don't think that really matters if it's two people of the same gender or people of different genders that are actually participating in the grading. I think as someone that's been on a grading panel, I don't think it really matters. I don't think it does put anyone at a particular disadvantage actually. Because the panel should be able to see through any sort of physical differences that are there. Anyway, just like if somebody who was, perhaps there were people that were of the same gender, but one was extremely tall and the other was extremely small, or one was extremely physically strong and one was not so much. It kind of, doesn't necessarily, although those things may become advantageous in a Shiai or a tournament situation, and not so much in a grading. So I don't think that's particularly why that happens. Now, interestingly, you mentioned about Shiai. Lots of them, and this is in Japan as well. This is in Japan as well, not just in the West, but in they often have like a women's category and then a mixed category. And the women are off kind of free to enter the men, not the men's category, but the mixed category. Sometimes there is a separate men's category and a women's category as well. That does exist too, like the All Japan Championships, for example, or the World Championships. But yeah, I mean, I just think that there's a different, because the goal of the encounter is different. I think that the differences in physicality are much less relevant, whether they be gender, height, musculature, or anything else. So yeah, I think that's why, to be honest. Next one. Okay. I've cut this one out, right? Because it's quite a long question, so I'm kind of chopping through it. So apologies that it's not sort of verbatim. But it says, owing to my age, many years of Japanese dojo experience, Okinawan karate and kobudo for 38 years, I've somehow become an assistant instructor, despite this person's ability, is what the question says. Since I learned Kendo in Chinese language, so this is someone actually, I think they said they were from Canada. Sorry, I haven't got the entire question here, but from Canada, but doing Kendo in China, I think. Since I learned Kendo in Chinese language and my Chinese isn't always at the impenetrable nuances of martial arts level, I still have lots of questions. Fair enough, that's what I'm here for. So here's the scenario. In Keiko, I'm fighting with one of the youngsters. I strike him with a good cut and then, he immediately spins around like nothing happened and usually haphazardly hammers me with his shinai. On the other hand, I want to say, great, you've got a never say die tenacity. And on the other hand, I want to say, didn't I just slice your hand off at the wrist or split your head down the center? How is it that you feel you have the realistic ability to do a little pirouette and strike? How should I be instructing the young, usually the young students, usually in their early 20s? Okay. After being decisively struck, should a student take a well-mannered moment to reflect while he resets himself in Chudan, or should he just keep swinging away like a hopeful but deluded Jar Jar Binks? Okay, so, right. This is quite difficult because it really depends on the level of the students. If they're at the very beginning of their sort of kendo journey, I'd say probably less than first dan, like still in the Q stages, I'd encourage them to just keep attacking. When I teach kids particularly, while I was over in Japan, actually, I was able to go and visit the dojos that I used to teach at and practice with the kids that I used to teach again. And my role as the teacher is to draw that fighting spirit out from them, really, draw the best out from them, and not so much, not so much make them feel defeated by my strikes. So I think your sort of earlier statement of having the sort of encouraging the never say die tenacity is the better way to go. Yes, strike them, but let them keep attacking. They don't need to sort of pause for thought at this stage. Now, once you start getting into the dan grades, now that's going to change. They have to think about why they're getting hit now, and sort of using their head a little bit more. But they haven't developed the kind of foundations of that yet. They need that spirit. They need that kikentai no ichi in their strikes before they can get to the stage where it matters as to whether they were struck or not, if that makes sense. So even despite their age, really, obviously you're saying that they're sort of young, but they're still sort of young adults. It's not like kids, but I kind of approach it in the same way, really. I'd be looking for them to keep attacking, as opposed to having them sort of reflect too much over them being hit by their teacher. Because it could turn into a demoralizing experience. And the last thing you want them to feel like is that you're kind of, and I'm not saying that, don't get me wrong here, yeah, I'm not saying this is your stance at all, but bearing in mind you've got a language barrier to deal with here, right, which I've got experience of, right, you want to be careful not to come off as, hey, I just beat you, you should know that I just beat you, sort of thing, and then they're going to take that in a sort of demoralizing way, and they're going to come off thinking that you're kind of not being very nice to them or something like that. So I think it's better to encourage that fighting spirit, especially if they're in the sort of beginning stages. Later, when they start getting through the dan grades, then you can start talking to them, particularly after the practice, and say, look, right, good fighting spirit, but now you have to think about why you were just hit, but that'll come later. Okay, next one. In Naginata, we have both competitive shiai, as in Kendo, and also engi, which is a kata competition. Both are considered important, and one of the results is that even lower grade practitioners usually do a decent level of kata when compared to some first and second dan practitioners. I also heard that some ken dojos put very little time into kata compared to Borgu drills. I'd love to talk about it and post your opinion about the idea of adding kendo kata to competitions. Will it boost the level of kata in kendo clubs, and is it worth it? Right. First off, some kendo kata competitions definitely exist because I've seen them. They're quite rare in Japan, but they're reasonably, I wouldn't say they're common, but there's a few of them outside of Japan. So there is that. People in the West outside of Japan practice a lot more kata than people in Japan do, which is interesting. I think they need to practice more kata in Japan, actually, especially after high school level. I'd say. I think they should practice it before that as well. But the difficult thing is that this is going to be a controversial statement, isn't it? All right, you're going to flame me for this, right? I would say until about 4th dan level, there's not a massive amount to be gained from practicing the kata. Did I just say that out loud? Uh-oh. Now, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't practice it. You definitely should, right? But the kata, until fourth dan, about fourth dan level, you need to learn the movements of it, and you need to get them perfect, right? Because once you develop past that, once you get into sort of fourth dan level, then you're dealing with more deeper level concepts in Kendo. Basically, up to third dan is generally considered kind of mastery of the physical aspects of Kendo, and then after third dan, fourth dan and up, that's when we're looking at more important things like, not important, more deep, sort of difficult concepts, things like proper seme, proper di, things like that. And these things are really what the kata are giving us. Now, of course, we've got the movements and what have you, and that's important. But what we gain from practicing the kata, you don't start to absorb that until you have that sort of basis of understanding of Shinai Kendo, which you gain at around fourth dan level. So don't wait. Right, let me clear this up. Right, I'm not saying don't practice kata until you're fourth dan. That isn't what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you start to gain a lot more from kata after you get to fourth dan level. All right. So you should still be practicing it. It's definitely beneficial, but the reason there's not so much emphasis placed on it is because there's not so many people that are above fourth dan and above. Right, compared to people that are third dan and below, and that's the same in Japan. That's exactly the same in Japan. So that's why I think that there's less emphasis placed on it than there is in than there is things like drills where you wear the boga. Now, again, let's be clear. I'm not saying that like people below fourth dan shouldn't care about kata or that kata's not important. It is, but anyway, I said it. I don't know anything about naginata though, so I don't know if it's the same in naginata or not. I'm not going to comment on that. I haven't a clue. But I think that's why it's less often practiced, and it is difficult. It's hard to say. I'm not sure, to be honest, that increasing kata competitions will increase the level of kata practice at clubs, because I think you need to get to a certain level. I think until here we go. I'm going to say something here that's going to get me in trouble. What the hell? Like I say, until you get to about fourth dan level, you're focusing really on practicing the physical elements of the kata, and until you reach that level of your Shinai Kendo, then you're not going to gain as much from the kata until after that. So you can't kind of skip to a better level or understanding or ability of the kata or understanding of the kata without doing the work on the Shinai side of it as well. They're so important that, they're really linked together much more than lots of people realize. And I know we talk about that a lot in the West especially. But what I'm saying is what people often say. People use that as a way to say, well, practicing kata means that I'm also practicing my Shinai Kendo. I'm improving my Shinai Kendo by practicing the kata. And to be honest, it doesn't really work like that. You've got to practice the Shinai stuff to get your kata better as well. And in fact, that's probably more important, especially, like I said, up until at least a fourth dan level and above. If that makes sense. Flames down below. Right. Next one. Given that there's a high chance of concussion when a player falls backwards when shoved or tripping, or if a shinai bends and hits someone on the back of the head, I'm curious why the men remains open at the back with no padding. Having gotten a concussion and having seen several people getting concussions. All right. So yeah, the men's open at the back of the head because, to be honest, this sort of falling down and hitting your head on the floor, or worse, the shinai wrapping round and hitting you on the back of the head, right? That doesn't happen in Japan so much, right? It doesn't, right? Sometimes people fall down. Not many people fall and hit their head on the floor, and even if they do, most people are all right afterwards. So the problem is there's more people doing Kendo in Japan than anywhere else, by far. So the development of Borgu is still quite sort of governed by that for a start. So in Japan, there's no need for that really, because it's such a rare occurrence. Secondly, my concern, to be honest, I could go away, at KendoStar and develop a men that probably covers the back of your head. One, you're gonna be super hot in that, right? You're gonna be super hot. You're not gonna be able to hear anything. Secondly, I'm concerned that it will that it's addressing the problem from the wrong direction. The problem is that it happens more outside of Japan because people push too hard and they hit too hard. And that's the problem that needs to be addressed rather than protecting people from it. And I'm concerned that if we start trying to protect people from people that hit too hard, we're not going to solve the problem of people hitting too hard. In fact, we might have the opposite effect. So I'm also reluctant to go down that route as somebody that develops Kendo equipment too. You shouldn't be pushing people so hard that they fall over and hit their head on the floor. You shouldn't be hitting people so hard that the shinai is able to literally bend around the head and hit them on the back of the head, like on the unprotected part. If you do that to somebody, you're doing it wrong. So you need to sort of bear that in mind, and instructors need to take a role in that as well. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Is the Tenouchi for Tsuki identical to the Tenouchi for cuts to men, Kata and Do? Are there any subtle differences between how one needs to perform Tenouchi for thrusts rather than cuts? Right, it's not identical, no. It's quite similar. But actually, I would say that the Tenouchi for men and Kata is different also than the Tenouchi for Do and also for Tsuki. So I've got a little shinai here. Let me see if I can get myself in shot so that we can see if I raise the chair up. I'm not sure if that's enough. Right, so when I'm hitting men, I'm squeezing with both of my hands. Mainly it's these three fingers that are swinging the shinai like this. And then I'm snapping them all together at the last second for that snap. And we talked a bit about Tenouchi recently when somebody asked about wringing the cloth, and I don't think I said I don't think it's like that. It's more like this kind of feeling, like this. And same for kote. But for do, I wouldn't use this kind of strike. My strike for do is going to be a little bit more solid, bam, this way, and I'm going to really be cutting into the door, as opposed to looking to. I hesitate to use the word chop, but it's kind of it's a little bit like that. It's kind of like a whip, isn't it? With the shinai, a little bit of a flick, really. That to get that sae. You don't want that from do. You need to pam. You need to cut into do. You don't need that pam. You know, can you see that? Like when you hit men like that, kote like that, but do bam like this. Because you do that with do, you're going to get a really wet door strike that's not, it's not going to be yuko dato, it's not going to be ippon. Because you're not going to get a solid cut. All right, so do is a bit different. Further, tsuki. Now, having said that with do, sorry, just to go back to do, I'd still be using these fingers to mainly control and swing the shinai, even if I brought my hands together a bit, which is what I tend to do when I hit do. I'm still using this part of my hand to control the shinai. However, for tsuki, okay, so for tsuki, what I'm looking to do is it's now really coming from here, yeah. It's really coming from here, and I'm using less of the right hand, but more of the left hand. The problem is if you go too wild with the right hand trying to do Tenouchi for tsuki, you end up pulling it off center. So I recommend just using these three fingers, giving it a bit of a squeeze as you kind of land it on there. I wouldn't do too much with the right hand, to be honest. And then if you can do tsuki like that, then with two hands, then that feeds itself into one-handed tsuki as well, because it's the same action. That's two hands and one hand. So yeah, it's a little bit different in that I tend to use less of the fingers of the right hand on that final sort of snap, if that makes sense. Okay, last one for today. I know there's loads more up there. I will get to them next time. But this one is from the Kendo Show Early Access group. If you're not in the group, why? There's a link in the description down below. Get in the group. It's free to join. Great place to post your questions. I've got 2 questions. 1, how do you feel about wearing a wedding ring during practicing Shiai? 2, is it considered rude to attack your opponent during their Zanshin, assuming a target is open? I do it from time to time, but it's never Ippon. And after watching some high-level fights, I notice I don't do it at all. Okay, so question 1, how do I feel about wearing a wedding ring during practice? You can see I'm wearing my wedding ring. I do not wear my wedding ring for Kendo. Some people have commented on this as well, saying the similar thing that I'm about to say. First off, I don't wear it because I don't want to get like hurt and like something to happen to my wedding ring. So I wear quite a thick and wide wedding band. Actually, it's probably unlikely that if someone hit this with a shinai that it get damaged, but I don't know. It ain't steel, yeah. It's gold, yeah. So it's not super hard. And secondly, somebody also wrote on there, I think, about how they got hit on the knuckle and it kind of like they got injured, it got swollen, and to treat it, they had to cut his wedding ring off in order to kind of treat him. Now, I'm not super worried about that because I use KendoStar Kata that are really, really protective, but you never know. So, especially the Vanguard series. Anyway, but you never know. So I don't risk it. All right. Personally, I don't wear any jewellery, anything like that, whilst I'm practicing Kendo. I do think it's better not to. I do think it's, it's better just to take it all off. I put it in a safe place whilst I'm practicing, and I put it back on afterwards. Now, I do know there are plenty of people that do wear the wedding ring while practicing, so fine. I'm not saying don't, I'm just saying that I don't, okay? And the second question was about attacking somebody during their Zanshin. So what I'm getting from that is, you mean, so they make an attack, and obviously they're kind of performing Zanshin, for want of a better word, and you're going to make a strike after that. That's perfectly acceptable, totally fine. If it's a Shiai, then if their strike was good, then it doesn't matter how much you attack them, you're going to lose the point still. But at the same time, I think it's worth recognizing that you have to be able to understand when you've been hit. If you're talking about in Jigeko, then yeah, I mean, if I make a men strike on someone, I make the men, it's a solid men, and I hit the men, and as as I'm sort of doing the Zanshin, as it were, someone like hits like a Hikido or something as I go past, fine, I don't mind them doing that, but it's still my men, you know what I mean? And as a teacher, that kind of shows me that person maybe, it really depends on the situation, this, to be honest. It really depends. I think no. You know what? Just forget what I just said. I think it's fine. You can attack somebody during their Zanshin, but just be careful not to kind of go over the top. You know what I mean? And especially if they're attacking and they miss and it's like not Ippon and they're still jumping around doing Zanshin, then yeah, fine, hit them. That's totally cool. So yeah, that's one thing I'd say. Probably I don't see why not. As long as you're not going nuts, like somebody, you're knocking someone over with ski or something, or like hitting them in somewhere that's totally not open and hurting them. But you said in the question already that it's a target that's open. Generally, you don't see it. You said you watch some Shiai videos, high-level Shiai, and they don't do it at all. Usually that's because, right, at high levels, somebody strikes, right? And if the strike connects and it's a good strike and they perform Zanshin, then their opponent doesn't have the opportunity to make a strike in return because they've been hit at a point when their kind of mind was asleep. And the Zanshin of the person that's made the strike, they've either got out of the way by the time that they've had chance to react. That's a really common occurrence. Secondly, you won't see it because if the strike didn't connect and it wasn't Ippon, usually then the person that's making a strike has got a good enough understanding of the criteria of valid strikes to know that the strike's not valid, and they don't kind of you know, try and sell the point with a load of like zanshin, shall we say, and instead move straight away to looking for the next opportunity. So I think that's why you don't see it so much in high level matches. But you see it a lot in sort of, especially like high school matches, Japanese high school kids. You know, one of them will go for men and the other one will kind of, even if they get hit, or they'll block and then they'll do hikido straight away, something like that. It's quite a good chance to hit somebody, especially if they've got their hands up like this, bam, hikido like this. So you see that's quite a common occurrence or pattern. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. That's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed the show today. Like I say, I know there's loads of other questions that I haven't covered, but I know this is already a long video. So I'll definitely cover them in future videos. Leave me more comments down below. Let me know what else is on your mind, what you'd like me to answer in future videos. Don't forget to do all the like, share, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. You know what to do by now. Join the Kendo Show Early Access group. And most importantly, do your shopping at KendoStar.com. KendoStar.com is the website that I run a course. It's a fantastic Kendo equipment website, specifically designed for people practicing Kendo around the world. It's really awesome stuff. I'm in charge of it, of course, and it doesn't only help fund the channel, but I mean, it's the best supplier on the internet. So go and shop at KendoStar.com. Thanks a lot for watching today, and I'll see you all next time.